fall?
John Chris.
Who?
John Chris.
Okay, tell me why.
Because he was using sin that whole world and he got into some bad stuff. Who is he? He was a Christian comedian.
Okay. Oh, yes! I just watched this Netflix thing. I was so sad. Yeah, they're a Christian comedian. Do you know about this guy? Yeah, he got into some trouble. He let sin go unchecked in his life. He got into some trouble. So yeah, great example. Thank you. Miles, I appreciate that. Who else? Or it could be biblically. So you got biblically, historically. Give me someone athletic. Adam and Eve. Yeah, kind of the biggest fall, right? Like they kind of fail for everybody. Who else? James and Donald. Great. Love that. Who else?
David.
David. King David, right? China? Okay, explain.
So pretty much now, all everybody is scared because of the coronavirus taking place.
Okay.
And there's origin starting in China, people are starting to stop flights, and everyone's just starting to
Yeah. Okay. Anybody heard of Tiger Woods? Yeah. What happened to him?
He lost the ball. He lost the ball.
Yeah, he got in a whole bunch of trouble, right? Infidelity, lots and lots of women, right? He just got into a lot of trouble, even to the point where that affected his career. Okay? I mean, we could go on and on. Think about Hitler, for instance. Like, he's kind of the token bad guy, right? Hitler. How did he have a great fall? What happened to him? Yeah, he committed suicide, right? So here he believed he was God. He tried to decide, like, hey, you, are you willing to live or die? You, are you willing to live or die, right? So he looked at each person, he tried to determine whether or not they were great enough to live or to die, right? The very idea of God himself. And then what happens? He's going to get caught. What happens to him? Yeah, him and his girlfriend, wife, whoever that lady was, right? Commit suicide and kill themselves. Okay, if we think about anybody who's failed, okay, anybody from King David, Adam and Eve, all the way to current people like Tiger Woods, what do you think they all had in common? And Miles kind of touched on it a little bit. Yeah. Okay, fame. That's something that they had in common, and they were well known. What else? Did you have something, Lane? I thought you raised your hand, did you? Okay, got it. Miles, what did you say? Sin, unchecked sin. Who do you think, if you interviewed Tiger Woods and Hitler and David before he cried out to the Lord, who do you think that they would say at that time? Who do you think they would claim was their God? Themselves, right? They would claim that they were God, that they knew better. Okay, Mr. Corey, will you come here?
I'm scared.
I know. Okay. No, you don't have to sit. Just stand. Okay, if we look at Mr. Corey versus me, who's going to win? Corey, right? I mean...
How dare you?
No, I say Cassie
Go
will
ahead.
because he will straighten it on you.
Let's go, girl. Let's go, girl.
Corey would
I
never.
respect
I
you.
know. Thank you. Okay, but if this represents... Okay, so imagine if this represents the throne of our hearts. Do you know what I mean by that? The throne. Who's dictating, who's ruling or driving the direction of our heart? Okay, and if Corey's playing God, and I'm playing myself, right? I want to be the leader at all times. And if we're supposed to share, do you think we're going to be able to share this chair very well? I think if we both sat on it, how do you think this is going to go? Yeah, there's no way.
You see these hips? They ain't working.
Right? There's no way we can both fit on this chair. Right? Tiger Woods says, oh, I'm driving this chair. I don't have room for a God. I can drive it best myself. And that's what we do all the time. Right? We say, God, I want you to sit here. I want you to sit here and drive the direction of my heart. But I also like to take control. Anybody else in here a control freak? Anybody else say, like, I kind of know best? Thank you for being honest. It's a big deal. Right? So I know best. And what happens is we end up having, especially for believers, we have this battle, right? Of God versus ourselves. Who's going to drive this car? Who's going to be here, this idea of bondage of the will? You're good.
Thanks.
Bondage of the will. How weird. How? Where did you hear that from?
We went to Bible school.
Yeah, is this from Martin Luther? 95 Thesis? Does anybody know that? Yeah, some of that ringing a bell now, okay? Anyways, he's kind of why we coined this term, but bondage of the will, what do we think that means? Bondage of the will. What is to be bonded or in bondage mean? Okay, bonded, right? Togetherness. If I kidnap someone and put them in bondage, what does that mean? Yeah, you got it. What does it mean? Yeah, enslave them.
Or they're trapped.
Entrap them, right? Might even physically like tie them to a chair, right? To keep them where you want. And when we talk about our own hearts and a bondage of the will, our heart is to always try to claim the driver's seat. Every time we come here, okay? When we look at chapter 4, so everyone go to chapter 4. We got a famous
Who needs a
story
Bible?
here.
We have some for you to borrow if you need one.
Yeah, who needs
Need
a
one?
Bible?
Who else? Anybody else?
You're good. If you need a Bible, you're good. Okay, someone tell me what this story, who this story is about. Header. Yeah. Cain and Abel. How many of you heard the story of Cain and Abel? Nice. I love it. Okay. I need two people. Asa and Albie, will you come up? Will you be my
Siblings.
I know. It's because I know you guys will let me do this. Okay. So this is a famous story we know. Here we go. We've got Albie. Well, wait, we'll have you be Abel. Okay. Okay, we have Cain and Abel up here. Tell me about the story. How does this story reflect what we just talked about the bondage of the will? Or who wants to be at this driver's seat? How does that work? What happens with their story? Yeah.
Cain kills Abel.
Okay, basic, right? Cain kills Abel. You're right. And why? What was growing unchecked in his heart?
Because he wanted something that his brother had.
He wanted something that his brother had. What did he want? What? Okay, maybe authority. He wanted to be over his brother. What happens? What's that called when you want something that someone else has? Or you're jealous, right? And remember that Abel had given a sacrifice to God, and God had said, this is pleasing, this is good. And then Cain did the same thing, right? But what did Cain do when he brought his sacrifices? Anybody know? I wish I had like candy. That would be so cool, but I don't.
I do have candy.
You do? Okay. Good. Quick, look in your Bibles.
Always try.
Quick, what's one of your I know. Woo! We're going for Cain. Okay. Why did God not accept Cain's sacrifice? Or yeah. Okay. I don't know your name, but your two glasses right there. Okay, so think about it. Okay. So jealousy is growing in Cain's heart, right? Because God liked Abel's sacrifice, right? Liked his offering. But just like what's your name? Just like what Macy said though, right? Is that Cain said, I'm gonna take whatever's left over. I don't have my best to give God, so I'm just gonna give him kind of whatever, and he'll accept that. God even says, like, Cain, sin is crouching at your door, right? He's at your heart, and you've got to get check over it. You've got to rule over it. You've got to work on this. You've got to let me be the driver and love me more than anything else. He does it, and he kills his brother. Okay, then we know what happens right shortly after Cain and Abel. What's the next story in your Bible? You've got a lot of people's names. Yep.
It's about Adam's descendants.
Yep. And then what's after that? Nice name.
Noah and
Yes, Noah and the flood. Okay, which Sean's going to talk about, so I'm not going to talk about. Then shortly after that, in chapter 11, Maybe we should get them candy because they're just so sweet and they just let me pick on them. No, acting that out would have been really
Bravo
hard.
performance. Enjoy.
Okay, what story do we have next? Yep. Tower of Babel, right? So remember quickly that the Noah and the flood, which Sean's going to talk about, completely started us fresh, right? Only a couple people were preserved. And then shortly after, how well do we know this story of Tower of Babel? Do we know it okay? Do we need a refresher? Okay, refresher. So, do I have time? I have good time myself. Good time.
You got a few minutes.
Few minutes, got it. Okay, I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but anybody ever heard of this or seen this before? If you have little siblings, / you were a kid yourself. Okay, so I'm reading this to my daughter Penny, and she loves the pictures. Are you judging me or are you judging them? Okay, good. All right, so we know the story, right? That not long after the flood, everybody starts having kids, having babies, right? And they repopulate the earth. And then they decide, because they're all together, it would be like this, that they're going to do something amazing, okay? So I'm going to read just a little bit to you. Ready? Guys, can look at the pictures. Okay, say, yes, they said, we'll say, look at us up here. Everyone will look at us, up at us, and we'll look down on them, and then we'll know we are something. We will be like God. We'll be famous and safe and happy, and everything will we'll be all right. Can't read, sorry. That we'll be like God. Do we remember hearing that before? Who said that?
Didn't, like in Adam and Eve, didn't the snake say that to Adam?
Yeah, that girl, he's like, hey, babe, right?
Yes, Brian.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
rain on you. That was great.
Yeah, Satan said that to Adam and Eve, right? Like, won't you just be like God? So notice again, who's trying to drive the seeds of their heart? Themselves, right? In their hearts, they're saying, I can do this better. We're going to create this huge, amazing tower, and everyone's going to see how awesome we are, okay? So they got to work. Brick by brick, the tower grew higher and higher until it soared above the city, touching the sky. They built stairs in the tower to climb to the top, and it was like a giant staircase to heaven. Look, they cheered, we're the ones. See what we can do with our very own hands? They were quite pleased with themselves. But God wasn't pleased with them. God could see what they were doing. They were trying to live without God. But God knew they wouldn't make them happy or safe or anything. If they kept on doing this, they would only destroy themselves, and God loved them too much to let that happen. So he stopped their plans. What does he do? He changes all the languages, right? He messes it all up. So they have to scatter. They have to move, and they have to change who they think their God is, right? They have to be reliant on actually God himself. Okay? And here, listen to this. This is important, okay? After that, people scattered all over the world, which is how we end up with so many languages today. You see, God knew however high they reached, however hard they tried, people could never get back to heaven by themselves. People needed a staircase. They needed a rescuer, because the way back to heaven wasn't a staircase, it was a person. People could never reach up to heaven, so heaven would have to come down to them, and one day it would. What is that talking about? Yeah. Either somebody. Yeah. When Jesus would come back, right? That's the rescuer that they were looking for, was really that. Okay? Love that. Okay? Does that make sense? So one last time before I have to go. Bondage of the will. What does that mean again? Yep. Yeah, it has to do with our heart, right? Our hearts are enslaved to ourselves, to what I want. Remember that driver's seat. So when you hear that bondage of the will, think of Mr. Corey and I, and this tiny, itsy bitsy little chair here. Okay? Okay. That's all I got for you.
Thanks, Cassie.
And then you're going up like,
Okay, so what I need now, we're gonna play a game. Competition. Before Sean comes up and before he teaches.
I'm coming up now. Once you play again. Junior high boys over here.
All right, here we go. So I need junior high boys over there with John. I need Andrew's small group with her. I need Emily, Betsy, are you with Emily? Andrea. Okay. Where is Emily?
I don't know. She's in Sarah and yeah. She was. I'll go check.
She took Sarah and Peggy with.
She had a Bible and
Okay, you're up. Oh, hey, you're up. Hey, catch it up. No, if it's serious, then don't worry about it. Hey, Betsy, can you go with Emily's small group for this game? Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to. Man, I'm pumped. I'm pumped. I'm more pumped in here than I am. Who you guys with? Go to your group. He is, but he knows the answer, don't he? How we go? Join us. Okay, so the name of this game is called Name That Sound. Okay? So what is going to happen, ladies? So, I'm sorry, well, if you have to get names. So what's going to happen is on the screen or through our speakers, you are going to hear a sound. After you hear that sound, it is your responsibility as a team to let us know what that sound is, okay? Come to Sean, tell him what your answer is, and I will tally the score because my brain is pretty much mush. I don't remember anything. I almost forget my wife's birthday all the time. Don't tell her anything. Don't tell her I said that. Pretty bad. 6/22/92, baby. 6/20. There you go. Okay, so you guys got it? You know what you're doing? When I say come up here, that's your time. Okay, so here we go. So you guys got it? Yeah. All right, everybody. Hey, Ryan Pierce, can you do me a huge favor? You see that purple bag of trail mix over there? Can you please bring that to me? The big dog's got to eat. I'm starving. Hey, thank you for serving. You rock. Thank you so much. All right, well, hey, here we go. First sound, let's hear it. You got to be specific.
Hey, it's okay. It's okay.
Is that it? Is that everybody?
Well, they're all the same, so they're all correct or they're all wrong.
They're all the same, and the answer is?
One.
Go play for a second, then we'll show up.
Good old chicken, right?
All right.
What was that? Now, it gets harder. So good luck. That was a freebie. All right, Dakota, next.
Belong in middle school. I love the unanimous decision. Interesting. It's not specific. Okay, I think you're all wrong. We'll see.
What we got?
Okay. And the answer?
That's an over right there. Nobody got that one.
Really?
Nobody got that.
What you gotta say? Helicopter?
Yeah, I like the motor. Just a very
A motor? Motorcycle. A motor?
Yeah, just
Man.
a motor in general. It could be lots of motors. I like it.
All right, here we go. Next one.
Paint broad strokes. That was easy. Turn me on, make sure that I'm at the good volume.
Next up. Next call.
Ooh, this will be fun. Two different answers.
Here we go.
I'm really disappointed. I thought that you would definitely know this.
Good.
Because you would not know this.
Great integrity. Okay, here we go. Answer is?
Guys. speaking. The ladies are now leading by one. Separately, but they're leading by one. Microwave guys. You know, maybe ramen or mac and cheese or
Because
something.
their mom makes it, man.
Oh. Man.
All right, here we go. Next one.
You stop it. I would like to point out, before you reveal the answer, that both ladies groups said that they were lightsabers, which is close, but a saber is a sword. Go ahead. Lightsaber, it's not a lightsaber. Let's look. I'm gonna give it to the ladies. The boys said zipper, so I.
Are you serious?
You went with a zipper. You said a zipper. You should be ashamed.
Wow. Are you serious?
No, she did not. I was listening. I know. I gave you a point. I gave you a point. I'm just giving you grief. I'm just giving you grief.
So you guys said zipper.
Zipper. They said zipper. They said zipper. The answer that was locked in with me was zipper. We're moving on. Next. No, it was not.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Okay,
We're still tied. I'm going to need specific answers here. Not as broad generalization. Very specific. Oh, was it? Yeah, don't let them answer anymore. You answer. Okay. Okay. And it's not specific. I'm going to have to be a very careful judge on that. All right.
All right, let's hear it. Sounds like chewing gum.
Okay. All right. I had pig. I had chewing something, which is sorry, not specific enough. They said dog eating dog food. They said dog eating dog food. I'm not so sure that that's food. It's a bone. A bone is not food. It's more like a toy.
It's a toy.
You don't have nourishment like any other
Now, just keep in mind, if the boy said that, you got it wrong. You're going to be mad at me
True.
for giving them a point.
No, it wouldn't.
Y'all won before. You ain't set me up first. So,
we said
unfortunately,
dog.
So what's going to happen here is they're still losing and you're still tied.
so it's all
We need drama. We need drama. If we come to the end, maybe we'll give you half a point. How many we got left?
5, I have 9. So we got
that was the
4 left. Let's go. Number 6.
That's me. It's Let's crack it up. Hey, Henry.
I think the girls are copying off each other. Come on, boys. Come on.
What do we even say?
There's no way that
Something that if I see it, I'll know it.
Here we go. So the girls currently are dominating. Fellas, we gotta get our game on, bro. What's going
Don't worry, we'll make the last one work. No problem. Alright. Moving on.
Yeah, this is backwards. Like the guys going into Disney movies,
I know.
but the fellas are missing lightsaber and well moments.
Lightsaber.
Everybody loves the Star Wars.
He said zipper.
This is true. Alright, let's go. I'm going to play this game.
Can we hear it again?
No idea.
Can we hear that again?
Again.
Alright, I'll allow it.
Good luck.
Okay. Yeah, I see it. It's okay, you don't know what I'm saying.
One more time.
No, that's it. That's all you get.
One more time, you lost your chance to celebrate.
I'm gonna turn this off. It's good now, it's ready. Okay, you do that. That's fine. Okay.
We haven't said anything yet.
I'll leave your What did you say? I think you're all right.
All right, here we go. Let's see it. Good. Street hockey is all the rage.
Over right there. Alright.
Lisa said right now, we're going up here. That's what it sounds like. It kind of sounds a little bit like
Good old street hockey.
One more time.
Very specific, I like that. Five,
Here we go, ladies. Here we go.
three,
What's going on?
two. Alright, let's see.
I bet it's a cat. Wait, what they say?
It's the news as soon as it happens. I don't know where.
How in the world? Hey, we have two left. We have two left. One left. Everyone. We're going to our last one. This is for all the marbles. Fellas, you have no chance, but still compete. Ladies, you're tied. Who will walk away the winner?
Come on, ladies.
Let's do it. time.
Okay. Here we go.
Hey, let Graham tell.
I still think you're. Wow, there's 3 different answers. I'm really
Wait, let's hear it. They are a grinder.
share with the group what you said.
It's a video of a little kid that runs into a glass door and hits his head.
That's really specific.
He said fire engine. Let's see what it is.
I swear to God.
That thing is hideous.
I think we have to get the half.
What?
No, they weren't. Well, kind of. So,
Make a sound.
we have a decision in the courtroom.
You're welcome.
The winners go to 7th and 8th grade girls. Great job. Because they said dog eating food. So we'll show you some grace. We'll give you half point for that. Everybody else,
Half point for dog.
thank you for coming in. Great job. Great work.
Don't think a zipper's supposed to like.
Fellas, stay in school. We got some work to do.
All right, going back on. It is so nice. All right. Hey, so glad that you guys are here tonight. Really glad that we get to look through the story of Noah. Corey did me a huge solid
Hey, take one, pass it around.
when he assigned me this passage. He gave me chapters 4 through 10. So we're going to cover 6 chapters in 25 minutes. Piece of cake. Basically, we're going to be turning a lot today. Okay, there was a phrase that I heard growing up. You got to turn to learn. We're going to be doing that. So get your Bibles ready, whether it's the digital or the paperback version. Be ready to go. All right, so we're going to focus in on the story of Noah. And before we begin, I really want to think about this question with you guys. Okay? Because we're going to read a story about how God destroyed the world. Not super cheery. Is God a good God? Is God loving? Okay? We're all sitting here in youth group and church, and we say, yeah, God's a good God. But I think if you were to go and talk to maybe some unbelieving friends of yours, and we looked at just this case study of God destroying the world, there might be some people that have trouble saying, yeah, God's loving. Right? He killed everybody. He killed everything. He destroyed his world. He destroyed his creation. How is that loving? It's kind of a hard question. Can you answer that question? If you had a friend who was struggling with that, right? You said, hey, you should be... Maybe they said, you know what, I just wanted to see what this God thing was about. And so I got a Bible and I just started Genesis and I got to chapter 6 and man, I'm only like 24 pages in and then God destroyed the whole world. Doesn't seem super loving. Do you have an answer? Can you go back to that friend and have something to kind of share that might convince them that God is loving? Right? Kind of a heavy thinker kind of a question, right? But as we go through this story, I want to point out all the places that we can prove that God is still a very loving God that's doing what is best for all of us. You good with that? We're going to look for those things as we go. We're going to be turning lots of pages, so be ready to go. Before we get into the passage, let's pray. Ask God to come and be with us and ask Him to prepare our hearts. Lord God, thank you for our time that we have together tonight as we look through this story. Lord, help us to understand even just a small, finite amount about who you are as a God. We know that we can't understand all that you are. We can't get our small little minds to wrap around how big and how great you are. But also help us to remember that the God that you were in the Old Testament, back here in this story with Noah, is the same God that you are today. You don't change. Nothing is an accident. Everything was done according to your plan and your purpose. And so as we watch this plan unfold, Lord, help us to see just how good you are, just how loving you are, and allow our hearts to be softened to see that, to fall in love with who you are, and to just be able to devote ourselves to living for you. It's in your Son Jesus' name we pray all these things. Amen. All right. So we're going to start right there with God judging the earth. We're going to look at chapter 6 in Genesis, verse 5. We're going to start there. We're going to read just a couple verses, and then we're going to unpack this. So chapter 6, verse 5. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And then we're going to jump to verse 13. Okay, just verse 13. It says, And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Okay, I want to show you pictures of two men. Okay, let's start with this first one. This guy's name is John Demjanjuk. There is a little mini-series on Netflix about him right now. This guy immigrated to the United States in the 1940s, early 1950s, was living in Cleveland, Ohio, minding his own business, was working for a car company, was a solid employee, never did anything against the law, never got in trouble, was just a quiet immigrant. Until recently, the Russian government declassified and shared some of the files that they found when they got to concentration camps from the World War II war, and when it ended, the Russians were the first to get to some of these camps. And we found that this man who had immigrated to the United States was actually a guard at one of these concentration camps. And he was among the most heinous, evil, just vile human beings that's ever walked this planet. Just did some really, really horrible things. And so he was sent to Israel. He was deported. He was sent to Israel to stand trial for his crimes. Even 40 years later, there were lots of people who were still living who remembered this man. And they came forward, came into this courtroom, and looked right at him and said, I will never forget that face. As long as I live, I know who that is, and that is, his name was Ivan the Terrible. And at the end of this court case, with all of these eyewitnesses, the judges decided that he was innocent, and they sent him back home. Despite mountains of evidence, despite eyewitness accounts from people who had been there, they said, no, this is not enough evidence. You can go home. You're free to go. How do you feel about that? Is that frustrating? Does that make you feel angry, sad? I mean, it should do a little something to us, right? That's not fair. It's not right. His sole job in this camp, his only job, was to kill people. They didn't work. There was nothing. You get off, you go here, you die, we bury you, we bring in new people. You die, we bring in new people. You die, we bring in new people. That was his only job. And there was proof, there was evidence. We knew he did it, and he got to go free. And I have another man. I someone who is a little closer to home. This is someone who, in the U.S., was a serial killer. His name is Ted Bundy. They decided to make a movie about him recently. And they thought that the best characterization of him was Zac Efron, which is why there's a picture of Zac Efron up there next to him. Because he was a normal looking, even some might say for the time, attractive, well-spoken guy. And he was able to, even in his case, even in this court case where they had all this evidence, again, all of this evidence proving that he had done these horrible acts, the judge, after he was convicted, but even after the judge convicted him and gave him his sentence, the judge turned and talked to him and said, I've never had a problem with you. You seem like a very nice man. I wish you the best. It's unfortunate that this is the path your life has taken, but I wish you all the best. I wish you well. And it's like, oh my goodness. This guy did all these horrible things, and you're like swayed because he's a well-spoken, normal-looking man. You almost just feel bad for him, despite the fact that he did all these things. Our God, thankfully, is not like these human judges. Thankfully, our God is a righteous, just judge. He judges everyone fairly. He knows the intentions of man's heart, right? It said that he saw the intentions of man's heart, and it was only evil continuously. But God knew the evidence, and God was fair. God did not let someone who was guilty go free. Right? Now, it still doesn't make us feel good because we're sinners and we're like, oh. But the character of God, in being a just God, is loving. If we had someone who committed a big crime here in Indianapolis, maybe your neighbor, and the judge, after seeing the evidence, the convicting evidence, said, you're free to go, and now they're back to living next door to you, you would not be okay with that, right? It's wrong for a judge to be unjust. God is a just God, right? He was, he is, and he always will be. He is just. And that should almost give us some concern because we know that we're sinful. And we know we're fallen. And we know that the price, the cost of sin is death, right? That's why God was just in destroying all that he created. That was fair. That was right. It was okay for him to do that. But thankfully, he makes a way for his children. He makes a way for his people. And we're going to continue on the story, and we're going to see that. In chapter 7, we're going to start in verse 1. We're going to read a couple of little snippets. I'm jumping. You got to stay with me. You got to turn to learn. We're going to keep going. But we're going to go through, and we're going to see some different places where we see that God makes a way for his people. So, chapter 7, verse 1. It says, Then the Lord said to Noah, Go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate, and 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens also. Make male and female to keep their offspring alive on the face of all the earth. Okay? So God's going to save his people. He's going to save the animals. He's going to provide a way. Right? Let's go to verse 16. This is so interesting. I've read this story. I know this story. I had never picked up on this one verse right here. Look how cool this is. And for those that entered, male and female of all flesh went in, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. God closed the door. God was the one who sealed the boat. They did not get 10 minutes into their float and go, uh-oh, we have a leak. We're going to be in trouble here. God closed the door for them. He was that involved in the process. He was right there. I never saw that before. It's so interesting to me because he cares so much for them that he was there in that moment as they walked in this gigantically big door. Those of you going to the Ark experience this weekend, I've still never gotten to go, and Corey makes me go skiing because he won't ski, and so I don't have to go this weekend either. But I hope as you go to the Ark experience, you see this big, massive door. I hope that it comes back to your mind that God closed that for them. That was not something that they even had to do. He shut it for them. He closed them in. He preserved them. I think it's just so interesting. And then chapter 8, verse 1 through 4. Let's go to chapter 8, verse 1 through 4. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark, and God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. The rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the waters had abated. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Look how detailed God is, even in just the storytelling. He tells you which day of which month and where it was. Like, he is so detailed in retelling the story because he cares about these details. I think that these 3 passages show us that God is sovereign. That means that God is in control of everything that happens. Every little detail God had. From closing the door, right? From sending the flood. He's in control of nature. He can flood everything if he wants to when it was time to be done, he could send the wind to dry it up. God's in control of all of those details. And if we were to go back and look at chapter 4 and chapter 5, which we didn't hit on, the purpose of those chapters is to show that God preserved a line for his people. In chapter 3, he made a promise to the serpent. He said, one day, the Son of Man will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel. And basically, he was saying, one day Jesus is going to come, and he's going to win. Right? He made that promise. My next point is that he's a promise keeper. I don't want to give that one away just yet. But he had to preserve a special line of righteous people in his sight that he could bring that person from. So we have Cain and Abel. You guys talked about this earlier. Cain, unrighteous in the Lord's sight. Abel was righteous in the Lord's sight. There's your good line. Problem, Cain killed Abel. We don't have the righteous line anymore. Now we have just a murderer and his descendants. And his descendants were a hot mess. If you read chapter 4, Cain's descendants were not good. Ending with Lamech, this guy named Lamech. And he made Cain look like he was a Boy Scout. Like he was not good, right? So we have a problem. We don't have a righteous line at the moment. So what does God do? God provides another son. He provides Seth. And now we have a righteous line again. Because God provided it. Chapter 5, the whole chapter 5 is descendants from Adam to Noah. That's the whole purpose of chapter 5. Watch what I did here. God's telling us, he says, watch, I took the first man and then through a line of kids, I'm going to bring us to Noah. God's in control of that. God's in those details. God's going to protect it. He's going to preserve it. And we get to Noah, when he decides he's going to start over, he protects Noah by putting him in safety from the water. Right? In other places in his word, God does the same thing. When they're fleeing in the Exodus story, what happens? He takes them in the Red Sea. His righteous people are protected. They get to go on dry land. The unrighteous people are not. They're drowned after the Israelites clear out. If you saw this morning, this symbol of baptism, we have, you go into the water and you die. You come up out of the water, born again in Christ, right? It's a symbolic gesture. So God's used water throughout his story a lot to make this kind of illustration for us. And what we need to see is that in all of these details, The Lord's in control, and he's making a way for his people. Does that seem like a loving God to you? Right? Because when we started, we said, is God loving? Is God good? Could you tell your friend who says, he just killed everybody, he's not a loving God? Could you come back to them and say, oh no, but he is a good God, he is a loving God? Let me tell you why. He's making a way for his people. They didn't deserve that. We'll get to that part too. I'm getting excited. We'll get there. All right. So God has done two things so far. He's been a just judge. He's been a righteous judge. He's been fair. And he's made a way for his people. He's been sovereign. He's in control of all the details. He's making a way. Let's go to our third point. We're going to start. This next point is going to be chapter 8, verse 20. Okay, so we're skipping ahead a little bit. I'll give you a second to get there. Chapter 8, verse 20. We're going to read two little sections here. I have a little heading in mind that says God's covenant with Noah. It says, Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Real quick, time out. God provided those animals. Before they went on the ark, God's like, you're going to need these guys. Okay? Because when you get off, you're going to need to just make a sacrifice to me because we know you're going to sin again and you need to have sacrificial animals to get pure and clean again. So again, God's providing even in that. Right? God knew you're going to need this. Let's keep going. Verse 21. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man. For the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So God acknowledges there that, again, the intentions of man in his heart are still evil, even from his youth. God's acknowledging we're not magically fixed after this event. But what he's saying is, I promise that I will never again do this. Okay, so it's a promise he made to us. Let's go to chapter 9, verse 12. What's another promise that he's going to make? Actually, you know what? That section is just him saying he's going to put a rainbow in the sky. That's the sign of the promise and of the covenant he's making with us. Okay? So we don't need to read that. That's what it says. We stop and we focus here. And I even can bring up chapter 3 where he made that promise he was going to bruise the head of the serpent. When God makes a promise, he is serious about it, right? This is not your pinky promise. Okay? When God makes a promise, it is a huge deal. This word covenant, right? It was the heading before we read verse 20, and in that little section there, he talked about, this is my covenant that I'm making with you, right? A covenant, there's a book. Can you put the title, the cover of the book up? This book was shared with me as I was preparing for this message, and it kind of shed light on those cultures where the Bible was written in. What did the word covenant mean to them? Okay, they wouldn't say, the translation, it's not necessarily that I will make a covenant with you, like I'll make a promise with you. It's actually I will cut a covenant with you. Because if you look forward in Genesis 15, there is a visual ceremony that God performs with, I think it's Abraham. I should have checked that before I said it, but I'm pretty sure it's Abraham. Where he takes the animals, he cuts the animals in half. Oh, just wait. And he passes through the middle. This little gesture is basically saying, by making this covenant, by making a covenant with you, I am wishing this fate upon myself if I do not hold up my end of the covenant. That's why it's called cutting a covenant. It was a big deal. If you made a covenant, you're basically saying, if I do not follow through, I want this ultimate punishment to come on me. Now, can we do that to God? No. But God is willing to make a covenant with us that has that strong of imagery, because when he makes a promise, he is serious about it. Right? So we see promises in this section, but you know what? In his word, there are so many promises that he makes to us. One that I just have to share with you that, again, remember that imagery. Like when God says this, he means it. In Romans 10, it says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. We believe that all Scripture is God-breathed. Right? So we believe that those words are God-breathed. And if he says it, it has to be true. At the beginning of this section in chapter 6, it said that God regretted making man. He said, I wish I had never made them, because they had all sinned and destroyed his creation. He didn't like it, right? But he promised in chapter 3 that one day we would have this descendant that bruises the head of the serpent. He can't get rid of all human beings. He can't. Because if he did, he wouldn't be able to fulfill this promise he made in chapter 3. God has to fulfill the promises that he makes. So anytime in Scripture you see God make a promise, you should cling to those promises, because you are assured that God will hold up his end. Okay? If God is a perfect promise keeper, is that a loving thing to be a perfect promise keeper? Right? That's a good thing, right? We don't want to someday get to heaven and all of a sudden you're standing before God and like him say, oh no, I was just kidding. Or oh no, I didn't really mean that. Like, ooh, we don't want that. We want what he said to be what he meant, right? We want what he says in his word to be true. We've got just a few more minutes. I'm going to hurry up here. All right, last point. Let's go to chapter 9, verse 21. This is the last point I'm going to make. This is just to paint a lovely, rosy picture of Noah. So I don't want you to think, well, but Noah was this, this goody two-shoes. Noah was perfect. Noah was faithful. I'm not like Noah. I have messed up before. But let's look at what Noah does here. All right? Verse 21. What's Noah do here? He drank of the wine and became drunk. Awesome. And lay uncovered in his tent. Great. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward into the tent, covering the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backwards, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done, he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. Okay, need us to understand this. This father just cursed one of his 3 sons. To the point that God's people are always at war, always at battle with this people, the Canaanites. This all happened because of this moment where where Noah makes this really poor decision. Noah's not perfect. Neither are we. I got a whole list of people here, of people in the Bible who aren't perfect. Noah was drunk. Abraham was too old. Isaac was a daydreamer. Jacob was a liar. You can go down this list. There's all these people who were flawed, who were not perfect, yet God used them. Just because you're not perfect does not mean that God cannot use you. Does that make God loving? The fact that he accepts you and wants to use you exactly as you are, even if you're not perfect? Right? I would say that that's a loving God. So as we went through the story, we saw that God's a just judge. Okay? He's gracious. He provides a way to protect his people. He's sovereign. He's always in control. And he's a promise keeper. I think all 4 of those attributes paint a picture of a loving God. Not a mean, vindictive, unfair, angry God. Right? So while this is a tricky story, it's tricky because he does. He destroys all of creation. But at the same time, in the story, there are these different threads that show us that God is loving. Our nail tonight is that God's unchanging character, okay, he's still this way today. God's unchanging character is that of a loving Father who is working all things out for your eternal good. Not for your happiness, not for your comfort, but for your eternal good, right? God is a good God. He cares about you, he loves you, and he wants what's best for you eternally. And at times, hard things happen. But that doesn't mean that God's not a loving God, right? So this week, what do we do with this? It's a story, it's a narrative. We're looking at the story of what's happened here at the beginning in Genesis. First of all, I think that we need to be what we call Berean believers. I told you at the beginning that I went through 6 chapters, 4 through 10. First of all, I want to challenge you. Please go read those chapters. Okay? Just because I stood up here and said some things does not mean that they are necessarily true. I could be wrong. You need to go and read the Bible for yourself. Is the picture of the loving God that I'm painting the same picture that you see when you read this story? Right? You go look for yourself. That's what I want to challenge you first. But then secondly, I'm confident that you'll see that God is a loving God and that those actions that he did were for our eternal good. As you go through your week this week, we've got to remind ourselves over and over that God is a good God. God loves you. God loves you. You got to remind yourself of this truth, because the way you see the world and the way you see circumstances could be changed depending on, do you understand, do you believe this truth? You with me? We good? Can you do that for me? All right. You are loved. Corey, you got anything for us?
Sir.
All right. Sorry, I went about 5 minutes over. Some of your nice story time, but thanks for listening, guys. You are loved. Go ahead and go be sent.
Brian, it's the move, or is it again?